Thanks everyone for coming along this evening to our nitrogen reporting using HawkEye webinar. What we're going to take you through tonight is just a recap of what the rules actually are for that nitrogen report that is required by your regional councils, when that's going to be due in, and then how you can use HawkEye to create that report. So just to go over the nitrogen fertiliser cap rule. So for the period from the 1st of July till the end of June, your synthetic nitrogen applications, so that's your urea, your ammos, things like that, on average over your grazed area mustn't be over 190 kilos of N per hectare per year. And to each hectare of pastoral area, so your grass areas, you cannot go over 190 at all. So what that means is if you've got grazed areas that are, say, in forage crops and in pasture, that average needs to be 190. So it means your forage crops could get a little bit more, but somewhere in your pastoral area you have to be less, so you offset that average. And the way you need to report this to council is, as per policy, you report on each contiguous land holding. So it's only your dairy farm that you need to report, but say your dairy farm has quite a clear gap in it, so for whatever reason you don't own some paddocks in the middle, like image B here that we've got from Dairy NZ, then that means you will have to report your dairy farm in two parts. Image A shows you what a contiguous land holding is like. If there's a road in between, that is fine, you still just report your farm as one. If you've got two dairies next to each other, you still report those dairies separately because they've got their own dairy supply numbers. So we go through that and report there. And then to each land holding, you need to assign those into different land categories by paddock. So what you're showing here is we've got our graze land. So you see the average of 190 kilos per hectare per N. The graze land is then split into your grazed forage crops and your grazed non-forage areas. So you can see here the grazed forage can exceed 190, but is included in the average. Your grazed non-forage is made up of grazed pasture and grazed harvest. Now, grazed pasture, it's your grass, that's fairly simple, but with grazed harvest, that's looking at things like grass seed crops, or if you're intermittently grazing under orchards, they would count as a grazed harvest crop. Now, not many dairies will have that type, but it is there because obviously the rule still applies to everyone 20 hectares and over, but this year and next year it is only dairies that are required to report. The other category that fits there is ungrazed land, which the NCAP does not apply to. So that would be your pure arable crops, so your cereals, any cut and carry that you've got, forestry blocks, things like that fit into your ungrazed land, as well as laneways, dairy sheds, anything on the farm that's not grazed. And just to recap that again, grazed land, average of 190, grazed pasture, capped to 190, forage and harvest crops, no cap, but included in the grazed average, and then your ungrazed land has no limits. So what we will go on to now is just show you how this works in HawkEye. Okay, so this is just our demo farm. This is a Lincoln dairy farm. We just borrow their map, but none of the data in here is real, just so we're warning as we go through. So basically inside of HawkEye when you log in, so anyone can get a HawkEye login as long as you've got a Ravensdown account, you can get a HawkEye login. The good thing about HawkEye is then once you've got an account, you can actually share it with anyone you want. So if you've got consultants doing this work for you, they can log in and do the report via HawkEye if they want, or you've got your share milkers or your farm workers and things, you can give them access to do this work for you if you'd like. So basically under our reporting section, there's a few different things that we report on, but there is a specific one for nitrogen reporting. So if we click on there, what you'll see when you come in is that a place to create your land holding. So we've already done one demo in here, so we already have one land holding, but you can have multiple ones on your accounts. So if we click new land holding, what that's going to come up with is all the things you need to enter to create your land holding. So you've got your name, so that would just be whatever your farm name is. So we can call it Wednesday Demo for us. You do need a New Zealand business number here. So this is how the councils are going to identify the farms. If you are a company, you will already have one. So you can go to the NZBN website and they will be there. So that's www.nzbn.gov.nz. You can search for your business or whatever you farm under to see if you have one. And if you don't have one, you can simply apply for one on the website. It is free. There's no cost to do that. But you do need one to do the report. So we'll just pop a number in there. You'll have your dairy company, so whoever you're supplying to. So if we had Fonterra here, your dairy supply number. And then you'll need to select the areas on your map that belong in this dairy farm. So there's two options here. We can either select from the list. We can just select what we'd like by clicking on the map, or we can select all. So if we select all, that's going to give us everything, but I can unclick these three up here. They're not part of the dairy farm, so we won't include them. The other things I would unselect is if you've got your laneways or anything, or your dairy sheds mapped on HawkEye, as I would take them out. So we've got the milking shed here, the calf shed and the standoff area. If they're not grazed, we may as well take them out and leave them as ungrazed land that way because they've not had any fertiliser on them. Then you need to select your regional council. So in this case, it would be ECAN. If you border or you cross two different regional councils, you'll need to put both in there. If you cross three, you'll put all three. I think most people would have two at the most. And then the last thing to do is up this area to include your whole farm. So you do need to include your laneways and dairy sheds in that area. So if we just said that our full area was 200 hectares, just pop that in. And then we save that there, and that's going to create our land holding. And then we've got that sitting there. And then you'll be able to use that for next year's report as well. So the reports this year and next year won't change. They'll be exactly the same. So if we click on our Wednesday demo, it's going to take into our reporting section. So if we click on new report, basically it's just going to ask us what year would you like to do your report to. So we've got this year and next year's report so far. And then you just need to put the contact person that is best for the council to contact about your nitrogen. So for you, that actually might be your share milker, or it could be your farm consultant because they're the ones that deal with all the nitrogen. Just whoever it is that's best on farm, we just enter their data there. And then we save, and then basically what that is going to do is create the report for this year and then bring us into assigning our land categories. So basically we need to say what were the paddocks doing on the farm during the year. So if your farm was all pasture, you could basically select the whole lot using this wee select button up here. When we go to assign, and then just pick graze pasture. But for this example, we'll say these 3 paddocks were in forage. These 3 paddocks we use for silage. So we'll take those out of this for now. We just pop into, the assign button. From the land categories, we pick the one that matches the most. Then we have the date range here. It's going to default to 1st of July to the end of June. And then you can put a note if you like, that's just for you. Nothing goes to councils with these notes. It's literally just something for your own prompt. And then we save, and what that's done is assigned all of those paddocks as pasture. So we can see them either in this view here. You'll see the graze pasture. You'll see there's a green tick. That means you've assigned a land category for the whole year for the reporting period. An exclamation mark means there's no information. And if you see something orange, it means you've put some data in, but it's not covering the whole year. You can also see that in a calendar view as well. So we can clear all those. And then if we pick our 3 here, and we say these are our paddocks that we're going into forage crops. So at this point, we're still in pasture from the 1st of July. And then we're going to start prepping that paddock to go into kale mid-October. So we'll go to the 15th of October. Then we can add another land category and we pop that into graze forage. And then from the 16th of November till the end of June, we're still in kale. And that's where we could put that wee note and say, hey, we're in kale there. And it's going to keep a running percentage of how much you've got left to go. So it's saying, cool, you've got 6%. And then these 3 paddocks we use for silage for part of the year. So with this, we go in, same, go pasture. And with silage or baleage or hay, what we'd say is the time that the end cap doesn't count is from the last time the cows grazed until the last harvest. So if we said the last time the cows grazed this paddock was the 1st of November, then it was basically shut up for silage. And then from the 1st of November till mid-February, so we did a couple of cuts, that was shut up for silage, so we put that into ungrazed. What that will do is with HawkEye, any applications of nitrogen that you recorded between the 2nd of November and the 15th of Feb will go into the ungrazed land category and will not be counted against that your grazed average for the grazed land. So that's important if you've got paddocks that you have used a bit of extra nitrogen on to grow silage, that part doesn't count towards your cap. So if we put that as silage, and then we can add the category back in because it's gone back into pasture from the 16th of Feb after the last harvest, again until end of June. And cool, now it said that, cool, we're all done. It's going to pop up a wee generate report button. If you don't want to do that at the moment, you could just dismiss this. There's another button up the top here that lets you do that. But if we go generate report, basically this is going to run all the numbers that you need for council in the way that they need these numbers to be reported. So our first tab is going to show you the nitrogen use, and it's at that high level. So you've got your grazed land. So here we've got all our grazed land was 178.1 hectares. And then on average, we applied 121.89 kilos of N per hectare per year. We do show you the full N applied for that, but that's just so you know where this figure comes from. When the council, when we do the submit to council part of the report, these figures, this N applied figure will not go. It's just there for your own reference. And then we've got the grazed forage crops, grazed non-forage land, which is made up of the pasture and harvest. So we don't send the pasture numbers by themselves. They're summed up into the grazed non-forage. What you'll notice here is that the pastoral land is higher hectares than what we have for grazed non-forage. That's because in the policy, there's a little bit of a quirk. If it's in forage crop at any point of the year, the whole year will count towards your forage crop number. So we report all the nitrogen for that whole year against forage crop. So that's the same if it's coming out of forage crop, you're finishing grazing it and you're going back into grass in say August, September. And the same if you're going into new forage there. We will do that calculation for you. We still recommend that you put in when it goes into forage and when it goes into pasture, because it means we can still track through that you're staying at that 190 when it is in pasture. So that rule still counts. At any point that's in pasture, it can't go over 190 during the reporting year. And then we've got that ungrazed land, which we've got 46.01. Because we've been in ungrazed land and pasture at the same time, those two figures there won't add up to your total land holding. They're just separate areas. And then we've got that figure there. The second part...
Sorry, excuse me, Rangi.
Sorry?
Do you just want to, while you're on that page, just point out that little question mark at the top and what that's for and working through the app?
Cool. So sorry, I forgot to point that out earlier. So if you're ever stuck on a page or you're unsure what you should be doing next, if you click these wee help pages, what it's going to do is, what that question mark does is pops you through to the help page. And so this one is on the report, talks about how to generate the report, how to get data in for that report if you don't have any data in HawkEye at the moment, and just takes you through how the calculation works and things there. There's also links off to related pages. So if you're unsure about creating the land holding, there's a separate page about what to do with your land holdings as well. There's also videos on the whole thing. So if you're unsure after today, you can always watch a video again, just to have a look at what you're doing. Or if you've got an agri manager, feel free to give them a call and they can talk you through it there as well. So this is our first page there. The second part of the report is you have to list all the products you applied, the dates you applied them, and the N percentage of those products. So you don't need to include rates, you don't need to include where that product was applied, but you do have to have a record of the dates you applied it. So in this case, if we look at the MO31, the N percentage of MO31 is 30.4. If this was urea, it'd be 46%, and then just all the dates applied. Just for your reference again, if you click on these wee magnifying glass, it's going to show you where that application was for that. But it's basically a list that's just part of the policy and what you need to supply. And then the third part is a proof of purchase. So you do need to provide proof of purchase of what you've done. Unfortunately, this is a demo account, so it doesn't have any invoices, but what this will do is take any Ravensdown invoice that you've got that contains N, and it will put it in the list. Now, councils are aware, and we've had this discussion with them, that you may have nitrogen invoices that don't belong to your dairy because you've got your runoff on the same account. They're also aware that some people share silos between farms, so everything will be purchased on one account. So that sales report is going to be maybe the same over 3 land holdings, and that's completely fine. So the sales don't have to match exactly what you've said you've applied, but you just have to have that reasoning in the background. So you're recording, this is where the FERT went, and this is where this FERT that I haven't recorded as applied is gone. So as long as you've got, cool, that went on the runoff, that's why it's there, then that's all fine. But otherwise, it will just be a list of your sales there. Now, for your own reference, we'd recommend that you can print this whole report. So you can print each page separately if you're just wanting to keep them for that reason, or you can download them into a spreadsheet as well. So there's that option, always that option there. But if we go print full report, what that's going to do is give you all these report pages plus a mapped version of the information, so you can see exactly what you've done. At the moment, unfortunately, we don't have anywhere you can save these inside HawkEye, but so we just recommend that you download it and save it as well, just for your reference. And there, it does take a wee while to create the report because it is quite a big chunk of information. So we'll just wait a wee bit there for that. While that's waiting to load, I will just talk a bit about how these reports are going to go to council. So Phil and I have been attending council meetings with all the regional councils, so all 16 regional councils got together, and what they've done is created a national database for this information to go to, that they can then pull the data out. So what it will mean is that because you've put this, in this example, we've put ECAN, once we have that ready and the council end is ready to take our data, we will have a button in here that says submit my report to council. It will give you a summary before it goes anywhere to go, cool, are you happy to send this? It will show you, tell you exactly what's going to get used for the data. So if you send it in with permission for ECAN to access your data, Horizons then can't come in and get that data for you. You're only giving permission for your regional council to access that from the database for them. And so you'll submit that, it will go off into that database, and then you'll be ticked off that you've sent that in there. If you're not comfortable with that, they are going to have a website version as well, where you can just physically enter the data. That is not live yet, but is expected to be live, I think, next week or the week after. Obviously, we know that this is due on the 31st of July, but we are expecting some comms to come out from all the councils to know that it'll be acceptable to have a small delay because they know their end is not ready to receive the data yet. And obviously we can't go live with our submitting to them until their end is ready either. So you won't get penalised if you haven't sent this to council by the 31st of July, but what we would recommend is having obviously all the information ready for them before, so you're ready for 31st of July, and then you can simply just push that button when you're ready. Or if you want to just send them a paper copy, there's nothing to stop you, but they really preferably want it digitally if you can. So I just have to change the screen share there to show you this report.
Just to follow up on what Rangi's saying there, there does seem to be a bit of a delay in having the automation absolutely in place. And as Rangi said, we believe there's going to be some communications from the councils just saying not to panic. They're going to look at a little bit of leeway. However, we would encourage you to still use the tools that you have to create the report ready. And in fact, as she said, if you really wanted to, you could contact the council if you felt that you really want to have it in by the 31st of July. You're well and truly entitled to touch base with them and find out another option of how you might deliver it.
Phil, can you see the report on the screen?
Yep, that's good.
Yep, cool, just confirming. So basically what it will print for the PDF version, you'll have a map of the farm that you've set all the paddocks that are in the farm. It'll have all the information that you've entered about your land holding. Then it will have that same nitrogen report page followed by the product report with all the products that you've applied. You'll see here some of these have numbers on them. So that means they correspond to a Ravensdown product and they have a Ravensdown product code. Where one doesn't exist means that someone's just recorded their own product. So that's not applicable. That's fine there. They do need that for council as well. And then you have your sales will be on another page. And then there's just a reference to where you have said your forage crops are, where you've said have been in pasture, and where was ungrazed land. So that's all there. And I'll just go back to the original screen share. Was there a few questions in there, Phil?
Nothing yet. I was just going to mention one more thing. Once you've created this report, you can copy it for next year as a start point, so you don't have to create it from scratch. And then you can jump in and just edit those paddocks or areas that need a little bit of tweaking. And Rangi can show us where that might happen as well. Rangi, please also show us where those multiple things were, just in case maybe I missed it, but where they are. Yeah.
So if your farm's pretty much similar from last year, we can just go create new report, pick the next year, copy existing. We just tick that wee box. It's going to fill in all the same data from last year. If we click the previous report, that would help. So we've got that there. We save that. It's basically going to create exactly the same land categories we had last year. The way I would recommend that you do it, if you've got paddocks that are, so these ones will be coming out of forage again, so we could select those there. And maybe these aren't in silage, won't be in silage, and are just going to be pasture. We can go to edit, and then there's a wee delete all button. That will just clear everything against those paddocks. So if we clear them all, and that means we can start again with what we're allocating, or you can just edit the dates. But I find starting from scratch is a lot easier for that. So now we've got those there. We can be like, cool. Well, those 3 paddocks are now pasture for that time frame. You'll see that these are now 22, 23. And then maybe I'm not sure about those 3 paddocks when exactly they're going into my forage crop or when exactly they're going into grass. I can just leave them until I'm ready to assign them. So, and you can generate the report at any point. So if you're wanting to check about where you're at halfway through the year or in autumn, you can just come in here at any time and click generate report. It'll tell you the reporting year isn't finished, but you'll just be able to do that as well through there.
So a little bit of setup in the first year, but from then on it should get a bit easier.
Okay, so what I'll do is just go over how that data comes in to HawkEye, or how you could get data into HawkEye. So inside our activities is where all our, anything you want to record on farm, you can basically record in HawkEye. So you'll see here that we've got fertilizer records that have come through there. These are all ones that I have self-entered into here. We also take in track map data. If you've got a track, so if you're using a track map spreader in your area and they're happy to share the data with HawkEye, you can get that in. It is the only thing in HawkEye that has a cost, because it's just a sharing data cost between us and TrackMap, and that's $125 per farm per year. We're currently working on an integration for precision spreaders, and we expect that sort of around the end of the year. We're starting a trial in August for that, so they'll be able to come in as well. Then we do take in CDEX data, so if you've got your own CDEX spreader, that data can come in as well. Otherwise, you're welcome to just record things manually. So if you're wanting to backtrack data in, because either way, it's going to be a little bit of work to do this, whether you choose to do it on the website that's going to go live, or whether you're going to calculate this yourself. So the way we create activities is under activities, there's a view and create. You basically just select the paddocks that you're after. So say we want these 5 paddocks here. We click record event, and then we're wanting to select what kind of activity type we have. So there's a few different things in here. You'll see chemical, effluent, fertilizers. So just click on fertilizer. It's going to default to today's date, but you can change that to whatever date you like. It's just taking a wee bit to load. Yeah, cool. So I can go back, or I can type in the date there, but if I'm going back to the 5th of April, we're recording for that date, it will pop the last 5 products that you've used to the top of the list. But so here I've used 15% potash, MO31. I've made a product of my own and called it N plus Jib. So if you are doing nitrogen and gibberellic acid, you can record that as well. And urea, but say we were looking for MO36. We pop that in, it's going to come up. If you're using a product that is a special mix or something that isn't in this list, you simply go to the edit here. You enter the name of the product. So I can just call it new product, if I spell right. Select fertilizer as its type, and then you need to know the NPKs per ton. So say if this was urea, we'd just be putting in 46. But if we're making up a product, we can put 23, 10, whatever it is, and click save, and then that will be available for you to always pick from your list as well. So it permanently goes into the list for you to use in the future, but we'll go back and pop that in as ammo 36. You can search for your operator, so that's just whoever spread it. So you'll see there's a self-completed here. There's a few odd names in this one, which are ones I've created myself. So we know a lot of people like to put their farm workers' names in here so they know who to blame if something's gone wrong. But anyone that we've got in our system that we can send fert orders through and things will be in the list. But if you're just doing it yourself, self-completed, you can do kgs or litres per hectare. So yeah, if you are doing that jib and urea mix, you can record it as litres, or if you're using things like FlowFed-N. But we pop that rate in there. So if we said it was at 80, the other thing you can do at this point is, if say you were applying different rates between your effluent, non-effluent areas, you can then go add rate down the bottom. I can go and select different areas here and put in another rate. So if I did those at 100, what you'll also notice is on these paddocks, we've got what we call exclusion zones. And inside HawkEye, that means it's areas that we do not put fertilizer on. So whether that's a wet corner, maybe it's a gateway that you always avoid. It could be a dry corner as well. So if there's a dry corner, you're not going to bother putting fertilizer on it, but it's still in the paddock. Or you may have some trees, you can put exclusion zones around them and it will not record against them. So it'll be a bit more accurate to where the trucks and things have actually gone. So if we just save that, it's going to create us a couple of activities, one at 80, one at 100 on that date. So if I pop back to here, I'll have to flip back to April. Probably shouldn't have gone back so far. You'll see the first one here. So that 5th of April, ammo 36 at 80. And you'll see those areas where the exclusion zones were have been cut out and left white. And that comes through from there. And so there's nothing wrong with recording yourself. There's nothing in the rules that say you have to have it GPS or anything like that. But also what would be useful with those exclusion zones as well is things like coming up like your freshwater farm plans where you may have to buffer off creeks or you're just buffering off waterways for your FEPs, means you can clearly mark those areas. Both if you choose to order from HawkEye and send a map to your spreader, those areas will be cut out of that map. Or if you're self-recording to go, look, I didn't go in here. So that's really important. For that. And that information also flows through into quite a lot of other reports that can help you during the year if you're wanting to monitor your nitrogen. So HawkEye has 3 standard nutrient reports. We've got the nutrient summary, the N190 heat map, and the N-paddock report. So the N190 and the N-paddock are solely about nitrogen, solely for that N190 for our cap time. So if we click on the N190 heat map, basically what this does is looks at all the N applications you've got on these paddocks and shows you how much that you've got versus the cap. So assuming that every paddock is allowed to have 190, it's going to show you the N applied so far, that 190 there. And then the scale goes from green when you're sort of around those 50s. When you get to 100, it goes into the yellows. The closer you get to 190, the redder it will go. And then once you go over, it turns into sort of a blue-purple. I mean, and that could be your silage paddocks and things, which is not an issue. So if I actually flick this back, so it always defaults to 1st of July, but if I flick this back 365 days, you'll see this color change. The other thing that can be useful here is if you look at a paddock and go, that's a bit weird, why did this paddock get so much more than the other two? You can click on the paddock on there or on the table. If we click into view chart, it's going to show us all our applications, and I can already see here that I've managed to record it very close together. So either I've made a mistake and I've actually double spread a paddock, or I've recorded it twice when I shouldn't have, and then I can go back and edit the error. Or if it's come in from a spreader, then we can go have a look and see if the spread map has come in incorrectly for whatever reason. From there. So that's basically our heat map. That's probably the most popular report because it's very simple. Click on it, it's going to show you those colors. There's also a bar graph version of those reports. Basically, we're just locked to July. You can select all or just select a few that you're wanting to look at. So I'm just wanting to look at these paddocks here. It's just going to show me a bar chart version, but I can also compare to previous years. So if you are looking to decrease your N usage and wanting to compare it to what you did in previous years, if you have that data in HawkEye, you can, or going forward, you can do those comparisons as well. So those are there. And then the last one is the full nutrient summary, and that will literally show you everything that's been applied, including things that are not nitrogen. So this can be useful if you're trying to get data out for maybe your overseeing nutrient budgets or just checking things to fill in for your dairy diary. That will be here, because you can filter it down to what nutrient you're looking for. So if you're only wanting N, you can actually sort it by N. If you have been recording your effluent as well, you can also run your report to include or exclude or show only effluent if you are recording it. Or you can search for a certain product. So if you're just wanting to look at all your urea applications, you could. So we'll just be looking for the urea there. So that will come through there. The other thing is there is a settings table where you can turn things on and off. So if you're wanting some columns to disappear, you can. So at the moment, what this is showing is what the full area of the paddock is, the area that was actually spread on that date. So what this is saying is in E1, we spread on 2.36 hectares of that paddock, and we applied MO31 at 80, and for 2.36 hectares, that applied 24 units of N. But what this weighted total does down the bottom says, cool, so you've applied all of this on this area, but if I average it out over that 2.82 hectares, it brings it down to 41. So this column is in a sum unless the spread area and the effective area are the same. So if you're getting information in from a truck, from a GPS, usually they will not be exactly the same size as the paddock. Unless you've got perfect size paddocks with exactly the same width as the truck needs to run, you will have some gaps and overlaps and things in the paddock. But it's a good reference point for what you need. The other report that has just come into HawkEye that can be useful is under sales, is we actually have a sales versus application summary as well. So if you're unsure what you purchased and what you need to record, what this will do is show you, unfortunately, again, this is a demo, so it doesn't have it live data, but what was collected versus what you said applied. So if you want, and if you click on each of these, it will show you the months that you've said this has happened. So if this was your rate, it'll bring in any Ravensdown invoice, not just ones that have been ordered from HawkEye. So it gives you a start point if you want to know, hey, how much did I purchase? What month did I purchase it? When should I apply it? Obviously with silos and things, you'll have a little bit of different months coming through there, but it will just give you an idea of what you're missing from that point. Phil, was there any questions that have come up anywhere?
We did have a question, and just to reiterate, Rangi, the question was, did you say runoffs are not included, just the milking platform?
Yep, so the rule is that only the dairy has to report, and that are specifically dairy cows. So if you milk sheep or you milk goats, not included, just dairy cows. You only need to include your runoff if your runoff is contiguous to your dairy farm. So pretending that these 3 paddocks up here were part of a runoff, they would not have to be reported. However, if, say, paddocks S7, S6, and S10 were part of a runoff, pretending there's a big runoff there, because they're attached to the dairy farm, you would, because they're part of that contiguous land holding on the map. So if you've got a gap between your runoff and your dairy, you don't have to report, that's fine, it gets excluded. The rules still apply though. So the rules apply to any grazed land, which is 20 hectares and over. So if you've got farming, 20 hectares, you're grazing animals, the rules apply to you, but the report only has to come from dairy farms. Unfortunately, just the way the policy was written. So eventually it may be everyone, but at the moment they're starting with dairy.
Okay, now I think, Rangi, maybe if you stopped sharing that screen, looks like you might have some messages going directly to you, which I won't be able to see.
Oh, I will
well, just while you have a look at those, I'll just reiterate a couple of things. Another one to remember is that effluent is not included in this report. Okay. And what we would encourage you to do when you've got some time is to put your exclusion zones on your map. Make sure that your farm map is accurate, because that's what drives all of your reporting, especially when you're getting, for instance, track map data back off a spreader, because it's GPS based and it uses the underlying farm map as a base. So remember, if you can subscribe to TrackMap. It's the only thing that costs anything at the moment in HawkEye. It's $125 a year, and it can be any number of spreaders, but it's per farm. So that means if a TrackMap-based spreader is spreading your work and they close it off properly and return it, you'll see it appear in your view activities, and you'll see it in that heat map is coming in, and so you'll have good information coming in. If you have been using a TrackMap spreader over the year and have not subscribed, you can still subscribe, and we can get that retrospectively entered in so that data is in there. The other things you can do is a joint venture Ravensdown spreaders, that data automatically goes in as well. If you have a CDEX unit that does FERT spreading, that comes in as well. Or you can manually create your own activities as per what Rangi was showing you. Okay, I'm going to pass back to you now, Rangi, because you may have some questions that I couldn't see.
I've just got one that just is asking about from Claire, how purchases are carried forward, dealt with in records. So because the sales and the purchases sales and applications don't exactly have to match, there's two options for you there. I would say this year it wouldn't be too big a deal if you don't include those. If you want to, you could supplement your report with your purchases from earlier, but they know that will happen. So say you purchased in June and applied in July, that's not going to show in your purchases in our report, and they're fully aware that that's how our report is going to run. We are investigating, we've got a question out to councils on what happens for people who need to supplement proof of purchase. So obviously, if you're purchasing from us and balance and maybe another company, you might need to supplement your proof of purchase. So you can record your balance applications in HawkEye, but we obviously won't have your balance sales. Also, if you are splitting nitrogen with a share milker, we'll only have one lot of the invoices. So you may need to supplement with the other invoices as well. We're still just trying to find out how you would send that in. So you might just have to email or upload to somewhere any extra invoices or PDFs of invoices that you need to send in. But I wouldn't be too concerned about it for this first year. They're really just wanting to get that in application data in.
I've got another question here. How do I get on when I spread all my FERT and do not use a contractor? Okay, so there's a couple of things to remember. The only types of controllers that we currently integrate with are a TrackMap controller, a CDEX controller. We're about to do precision tracking controllers and our joint venture ones. If you're using a controller that's not one of those, the only way you're going to be able to do it is do that manual creation where you select the paddocks, say what you put on there, make sure you put your exclusion zones in first, say what you put on there and record it manually. Just at the moment, that's the way it is. Now, we are going to be looking at a generic, any sort of controller method of getting data in. I can't give you the details on it yet because we're yet to do the discovery on it, but we know that's something that we need to look at going forward.
But you, as I said, you can always go in manually to do that. The other option with HawkEye too is if you are ordering through HawkEye, even if you're ordering to send yourself a map. So we do have people that do that on the west coast of South Island, where they'll do like what we would call a spread only order in HawkEye, and it just will send a map. And then what you can do with that is actually essentially complete it in the order. I can try and show you actually on there if I just share my screen again. So inside HawkEye with the ordering, you can do like a standard order through HawkEye. You can order from your plan, which is quite a good way to do it because you can track everything that's happening against what our agri managers have recommended. You can order whatever you like, so a standalone, a special mix product. But you can also do this just as a spread request, and that will just send a map. So if you're spreading your own and you're storing FERT on farm, so you're ordering it in bulk from us, you can come in here and that will opt to just hop through an order with whatever you're looking for. It's not an order, just a spread map. So I go through here, put the rate in, select the areas that we're going to send it to. The good thing about ordering through HawkEye too is it's going to show you anywhere you've got scheduled still for ordering, anywhere that you've recorded previous applications. So it should minimize that risk of doubling up on paddocks. So you'll see here, I've got a lot of green have come up going, hey, you've applied urea in all these places in the last 28 days. So we go with 28 days because it kind of fits that middle length of a round, but you can come in and go, cool, well, I've been applying super for 2 months. I actually want to see the last 90 days, or I want to do a custom range and only see the last 40 days when you're on longer rounds. So that's an option as well. But if we said, cool, I'm just going to do these paddocks. And then we can head off to logistics. In a normal order, this will ask you what store and what spreader you're using. And from there, but we obviously don't need a store if we're just sending a map to ourselves or someone else. And then again, it's going to pop us more and go, hey, you sure you want to put stuff on here because something else has been applied. So especially if you are recording effluent, it will go, you put on effluent a week ago, are you sure you want to go and put nitrogen on again? We try to put as many warnings in as possible. Just obviously, especially with how expensive fertilizer is at the moment, you should be using it as efficiently as possible. So if we just call this test and put a reference, the contact will be me because I'm logged in, but you can pick any contacts that are on your Ravenstone account. So I can send this off to Phil instead. Any notes you want to put on, so I'll be like, please apply after 12. We get some very colourful things that come through our messages in here for our spreaders. If we go next there, that just says own, but you can pick anyone again that we've got in our system at Ravenstone. And this is just thinking about the map itself and just preparing that to load the summary. It's going to tell you everything about that. And then there's the option for checking the PDF, making sure everything's correct at this point. You'll see all the areas that are cut out from exclusion zones. So if this was going to a track map spreader you'd integrated with, or soon to be Precision, or off to our joint venture spreaders, so that's Sanford's, Ray Brothers spreading Northland and spreading Canterbury, these areas will be cut out for them. And when they put the map in the truck, it means the truck's going to get into that area, and if it accidentally drives in, the spinner should shut off, it won't spread in that area as well. So a lot of the trucks are very intelligent with that now. They'll be able to do that. And then I can actually add additional recipients as well. So if you're wanting to send it to your farm worker and they're in that list, you can send it there, or I could just type an email address and send it off. Oh, actually probably should put a real one. But to do the job, and then we push request spread. What that's going to do is then obviously send off that map to whoever you wanted to send it off to. And if it was track map, would head into track map online, soon would head into the Precision system or into our own JV system. And then if we pop into order status, it's going to show us that order there, and it shows in progress. So it's saying, cool, that's my orders in progress. These are the orders that I've either recorded that the FERT speed spread, or we've had a map back for them. So the spread files come back. But if I go into this one and go view details, I can then complete the order. So it kind of does that full track round of what we're wanting to do. So if I go complete order here, it says, oh, cool, do you want to create an activity? Push complete. It's telling me I can't choose a future date. Fair enough, can't record in the future. But say we did that back on the 19th. And say when I went to do it, actually the paddock was too wet, I can just go and select the paddock I actually did. So there's always chances to change it in there. And then we just click save. And that's the same way we created our self activities, but it's just putting all the information in based on what you've got ordered. And that can be a good way to track what actually is happening on the farm. And then you'll see it back in that view activities again.
Got a question here, Rangi. Can you put an alert on for the interval between paddock applications and a spreading request? Now, what I might do is, Claire, from you, I might just ask you to unmute, because I want to make sure we get the right question here, because we do show the previous 28 days. However, you may have a slightly more total question. And no, okay, oh, there you are. Yeah, okay, we should be able to hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the issues that has come to our attention here is that sometimes we're running around at 16 and 17 days because we use a spreader, and you know, instead of coming at the end of the week, they might come at the beginning of the week or whatever. So if we were looking at having a minimum 20 or 21 or whatever the appropriate interval might be, can we actually set that so we're not going back into days, into paddocks at shorter intervals, or have an issue, for the example that, you know, does a spreader go in there by mistake, or does it get put onto a list by mistake in 2 or 3 days apart, sort of thing, that the example was shown on a graph before.
Yeah, so when you go into, so say the spreaders come back before you've got the spread back or before you've recorded it, it will still show as scheduled on the map. So you should, even if you haven't recorded it yet for whatever reason, you'd still see it. If you shorten up, when you're doing the order, you can shorten up that round. So if you were expecting to go back every 21 days, then you could shorten it down to 21 as well. But it's always going to give you warnings for 28, just because that's a full month and we kind of cover that. We have got some work in it's in a very long list of things that would be great to have in HawkEye, where you can actually set your own warning lengths for that. Yeah. But as long as you've got it either recorded in there or you've said you're going to apply it there, it will come up in like a blue, it'll come up in blue rather than in green, just to go, hey, you've got this scheduled, but I haven't got a record of it yet. But hopefully that's enough of a prompt to go, hey, don't pick that paddock. You're expecting to get a map back from that one, so you don't order it again.
And if you hover over top of it, it'll highlight and show you in blue what is scheduled on what date as well. Oh, you might be able to pick one up, Rangi, maybe just do an example. Yeah.
Oh, I think I completed one.
And would the hover show the last date the application was put in? Because if it flicks up, then it will be helpful to see that.
As long as they have returned the data, yes. You need to make sure that the data's been returned. So when it comes back in, it'll go in green. If it's still scheduled, in other words, it hasn't been reconciled back in, it should be showing as blue.
Yep. So these ones are all ones that have been recorded. So if I hover over it, it's going to go, cool, that was the 6th of the 7th. So you might go, actually, I'm just ordering now for next week. So that's fine. And then at that point, you could shorten the dates up as well. But yep, anytime you hover, it's going to tell you exactly the date that you applied it.
Okay, thank
you. As well through there. Do I have another question? No, that's just from you. Was there anything else anyone wanted to ask today? I know it's a lot to think about with the nitrogen reporting. I think Phil and I have felt like we've presented this to different people about 100 times. But I mean, it is a lot of work up front, but it's going to make it easier once you do it once, hopefully be in there. We are due to start on our mobile app work as well, and hopefully that'll make it a lot easier for people to record on the fly. Unfortunately, this nitrogen cap work actually meant we had to delay doing our mobile, our updates to our mobile app for HawkEye, because we do want people to be able to record as they're going, which obviously be useful for those that are self-applying to be able to do that in the paddock.
I just a couple of things. First of all, thanks very much for coming along and watching. We do appreciate you taking the time out to do it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call the 0800 number, 0800 73 73 73, or there's an online chat on the HawkEye website as well when you jump on there. And the website does have a lot of how-tos and step-by-step how to take yourself through the different pieces, whether it's drawing a paddock or editing a paddock or adding features and hazards, so you can add in your exclusion zones and troughs and all sorts of things. So have a look, have a play. You can't break it. One thing that we do reiterate is, if you are integrated with a spreader, please remember you're the boss of what they're doing. Make sure they're returning the job back after they've completed it. Make sure they complete it properly. Otherwise, we can't magically create it inside HawkEye. We do rely on them to do their job as well. So that relationship is not with us, so it's your relationship with your spreader. So keep them on their toes. They're part of the whole thing as well. And there's no more questions, so we'll close up now. And I once again would just like to thank you all very much for your time. Thanks.
Thank you.